VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at VCYAmerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And thank you for joining us on Crosstalk today here on the VCY America Network. Folks, buckle your seatbelts. Scandal is literally shaking the White House as numerous issues have come to the forefront, including the IRS targeting conservative groups, the Associated Press lines being tapped. Let's not forget about Benghazi. Let's not forget about the questions that continue to loom on Fast and Furious and other scandals going on as well. We're going to delve into it today with Michael Connolly. He's a constitutional attorney, a U.S. Army veteran, and executive director of the United States Justice Foundation. They are a nonprofit, public interest legal organization dedicated to instruct, inform, and educate the public and to litigate on the significant legal issues confronting America. Michael, thanks for joining us today, and thank you for your service to the nation.
Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you for having me.
Before we get into our main topic today of all these scandals shaking the White House, the Philadelphia abortionist Kermit Gosnell sentenced to a third life term in jail. He avoided facing the death penalty for agreeing not to appeal his convictions. Michael, I know you've been watching this case. You've been observing it. Give us your comment on this Gosnell situation.
Well, it's absolutely horrendous, and unfortunately, it's not isolated. I mean, this is going on all over the country. Back in the mid-1970s, I was appointed Special Assistant Attorney General in Louisiana, where I was practicing law at the time, to defend these bill that I wrote and got through the legislature, which basically regulated abortion clinics. Because at that time, doctors were not even required to do abortions. These clinics could have anybody doing them. Women were literally walking out of these clinics and dropping dead in the parking lot. The ACLU came in and fought it. We had a federal judge who later went to prison for being corrupt, who ruled against us. And, you know, we knew then that this type of thing was going on when abortion had been made legal. Now, finally, after Planned Parenthood and groups like that have been covering up this sort of thing for years and years, it's come to light with this Gosnell verdict. And I hope and pray that more of these are going to come to light and that people are going to realize just how horrible it is that we are killing millions of our children in these clinics. And you know, it's got to stop.
Folks, yesterday afternoon, Mark Crutcher at Life Dynamics brought forth another stirring DVD, and they posted the video pertaining to additional clinic workers from another location coming, and just gruesome testimony as to what's going on. And what Michael is saying appears to be very accurate, is that what has happened in the Gosnell Clinic is happening in other locations across the nation. Well, Michael, the scandals are becoming so numerous, it's hard to know where to begin because they are all so outrageous. But let's begin with the IRS targeting conservative groups. It first leaked out that this intense scrutiny was against the Tea Party and Patriot groups. We understand it's gone even further. Michael, what do we know so far?
Well, what we know is the IG's report that has come out, and I was listening to Fox News a while ago about it. I have not read the entire report myself yet, but I intend to. And basically, this was broadened. Originally, it was anybody with the Tea Party in their name, any group. And then it was any group that had patriots in their name. And then it was any group that talked about limited government or any group that opposed the Obama administration. All of these were targeted. Then they expanded it even further. Any group that was pro-Israel was being targeted. So this was designed and successful in having a chilling effect on these groups who were applying for tax-exempt status so they could raise the money to support their causes, and they are perfectly entitled to do this. It's perfectly legal for them to do this, and yet the IRS was basically putting these applications on hold. And then they were sending out questionnaires. And I talked to several Tea Party group members a couple of years ago about this, and we were trying to get something done. We couldn't get anybody in Congress really to listen, although there were some inquiries made. The media, national news media, was not interested in it. But what they did is to send out questionnaires that included things like, not only did they want their list of donors, they wanted a list of family members. They wanted to know the political leanings of everybody in the group. They wanted to know if any of them were planning to run for office, and if so, what offices were they going to run for. This was all illegal. This was all something that was designed to basically get these groups to drop their applications, which many of them did, or keep them from getting the 501c4 status prior to the election. This was politically motivated. I do not for a second believe it did not originate in the White House. This is something that Obama wanted done. He's been doing this through other agencies, the FCC, the SEC. The IRS is, of course, the agency that most people are very, very frightened of to begin with. And they were harassing these groups. And the problem is that, it still hasn't stopped. You still have members of our groups out there that have been waiting as long as 3 years to get approval so they can get these tax-exempt donations, because that makes a big difference in how they raise money. In fact, I formed my own nonprofit group a couple of years ago before I took over for the Justice Foundation, and it still exists. It's called the Constitutional Law Alliance. Well, I didn't even apply because I knew that if I did apply for the tax exemption, that I would be asked to list my donors. I had no intention of revealing who my donors were and still had no intention of doing it. And, so I just didn't even apply. How many other groups out there did the same thing?
What business is it of the IRS? Who is donating to them? Exactly.
It's not their business. There's no legal grounds for this. And what made it even worse is the IRS, when you file an application for tax-exempt status, if it is approved, then your information becomes public. That's the law. But prior to being approved, it is also the law that the information is private and it cannot be released. Now it's come out that the IRS was turning over information of groups that had applied to a left-wing nonprofit group, basically a so-called news group, and they were releasing this information to the public. So, again, that's another violation of the law.
Keep in mind now, again, and you laid the context for this, the context is that these groups are springing up in the midst of a very heated election cycle. Conservative groups were denied, and at the same time, Fox News is reporting that there was a spike in applications from labor groups, which didn't have problem gaining their 501c3 or 4 status, whatever it might be. Doesn't that present a double standard here?
Oh, absolutely. It was a double standard, and that's why we know it was politically motivated. It came out earlier today that Obama's brother applied for a 501c3 status for his charity, and it was expedited. So there was definitely a double standard working here, and the whole idea was, as I said, to stifle free speech. This was a massive violation of the First Amendment rights of Americans. And it was actually 2 election cycles, because they started doing this in early 2010. Before the midterm elections, and they started denying groups, or not necessarily denying it, just drawing out the application process, asking illegal questions, intimidating and harassing the officers of these groups and the members of these groups. This went on for several years, and like I said, it still hadn't been resolved.
I understand they were even asking some groups for a full listing of all their volunteers.
Yeah, not only the volunteers, but they also wanted to know who the family members were of these volunteers,
Good grief.
Even if they were not involved.
Mitch McConnell outraged over this issue. I want to play a clip here from the Senate floor in which he spoke, and folks, I trust you'll be able to catch what Senator Mitch McConnell is saying here.
Over the past few days, we've heard many in the media talk about how this has been a rough week for the administration. Actually, it's been a worse week for the First Amendment. On Friday, we learned that, just as we'd been told by our constituents, the IRS deliberately targeted conservative groups across the country in the midst of a heated national election. Over the weekend, we learned that the extent of it was even broader than we originally thought. Then this morning, we all learned that the targeting wasn't limited to an IRS office out of Cincinnati, as the administration suggested last week, but that it reached all the way to the IRS headquarters right here in Washington. What we don't know at this point is whether it jumped the fence from the IRS to the White House. But we do know this: we can't count on the administration to be forthcoming about the details of this scandal, because so far they've been anything but. So this morning I'm calling on the President to make available, completely and without restriction, everyone who can answer the questions we have as to what's been going on at the IRS, who knew about it, and how high it went. No stonewalling, no more incomplete answers, no more misleading responses, no holding back witnesses, no matter how senior their current or former positions. We need full transparency, and we need full cooperation. The American people deserve answers. The answers that the IRS has now owned up to and that were uncovered by their own Inspector General are an outrage, an absolute outrage. We now know that the IRS targeted groups for using such terminology as, get this, we the people, and for educating folks about the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
I'm going to stop there. His comments go longer than we can handle. But, Michael, you're one. You'd be indicted for this because you certainly inform about the Constitution. But groups using we the people, comment on what Senator McConnell said here, including the line that came about the IRS attributing this to some low-level staffers in the Cincinnati office.
Well, to begin with, people need to know that the Cincinnati office is where the 501c3 and C4 applications go. So this is not just a field office where it happened to be a couple of people dealing with a couple of applications. All of the applications go there. And this was being approved and handled also out of the Washington, D.C. office. In California, this was happening. So this was absolutely not just a low-level group of people. And what my question is at this point is, why has nobody been fired? Why has nobody been forced to resign? I mean, we have the acting director of the IRS coming out and saying that supposedly this was just two people, two rogue employees. Well, the IG's report, the Inspector General's report, points out that this is not the case, that this was widespread, that they had several teams appointed to do this. It was not just two people. Yet the commissioner comes out and says, oh, it was just a couple of low-level people, and it was not political. It had nothing to do with the politics of the organization.
Yeah,
well, that's an absolute lie.
Yeah, that line's been coming forth even yet today. It's just two rogue employees.
Well, like I said, the Inspector General, I mean, this guy works for the IRS, basically. He's independent in that he investigates stuff like this. His report says absolutely this was not the case. This was not a rogue action by a couple of employees. This was systematically done, and it was done deliberately, and it deliberately targeted these groups. Now, you remember when Janet Napolitano took over as the head of the Department of Homeland Security, she sent out a list to all law enforcement in the country of potential domestic terrorists. That included anybody that supported the right to life, anybody that supported the Second Amendment. It included anybody that was a military veteran. And so this follows the pattern of attacking the opposition to the Obama administration.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. Michael Connolly is our guest here today from the U.S. Justice Foundation. We're talking about scandal shaking the White House. We'll be right back.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, creation author at the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, I've heard that between verses 1 and 2 of Genesis chapter 1, there are supposed to be billions of years. Is this true?
Chris, this is called the gap theory, which holds that God created things very good in the beginning, but then they were made without form and void as Satan was cast to the earth, after which God recreated the earth in 6 days. This allows advocates to hold both the 6-day creation and the millions of years of time. In recent years, many Hebrew scholars have shown conclusively that this interpretation of Genesis is not accurate. Furthermore, creation scientists have proven that neither the billions of years nor evolution is true, thus they don't have to be put anywhere. Very few people hold to the gap theory anymore, and I think with good reason. How much better it is just to go back to Genesis and let Scripture do its own talking in a straightforward manner.
Thanks for joining us for Back to Genesis.
Scandal is shaking the White House. Talking with us today is Michael Connolly, a constitutional attorney. He's the executive director of the United States Justice Foundation. Just before we get back into our questions, Michael, if you would, give us a word about the U.S. Justice Foundation.
Well, the United States Justice Foundation has been around for 35 years, and we represent people who have constitutional issues, who are losing their constitutional rights or having them threatened. We also go after the government when we feel like the government is violating people's constitutional rights or trying to damage the Constitution. We represent clients for free. We raise our money independently. We have a number of cases going right now. We've been involved in filing briefs in the Supreme Court on the Defense of Marriage Act, on Proposition 8 out in California. We filed 4 Court of Appeal briefs defending people from the Obamacare mandate that they have to violate their religious beliefs and provide free contraception and morning after pills to their employees. We're involved in, right now, a massive lawsuit that we're preparing to file against the Veterans Administration, which is taking away the Second Amendment rights of the people who went out there and fought for us. So we have a number of issues going, and people can find out more about what we're doing at usjf.net. And by the way, if there are any Tea Party groups out there that were interested in being represented by us, and I think there are probably several, at least here in Texas, who had these issues with the IRS, we may be interested in helping you out in that regard in litigation. So they need to contact us at usjf.net also.
Okay, again, folks, the website is USJF, standing for U.S. Justice Foundation, usjf.net. Julian Bond, Chairman Emeritus of the NAACP, yesterday said he supports the IRS's political targeting of Tea Party groups because, quote, they are the Taliban wing of American politics. Your response, Michael?
Well, that unfortunately is typical of the mindset of some of the people on the left. And I think it's typical of the Obama administration because they adopt a siege mentality. Anytime anybody criticizes the President of the United States or his administration, or for that matter, the Democrats in Congress for what they're doing to this country, we are immediately labeled as racist. And that's what another thing Julian Bond said yesterday, the Tea Parties are openly racist. Well, one of the Tea Party leaders here in Texas that I work with is, in fact, a black minister. And he's been visited by the Secret Service, as a matter of fact. I've had him on my own talk radio show. He got visited by the Secret Service to try to intimidate him into stopping his opposition to Obama. So this is the mindset that many on the left have, that in the White House, is that if you don't agree with us, we're going to shut you down and we're going to shut you up. And that's what this IRS action was designed to do.
Hasn't the IRS been brought in before Congress and before committees? Haven't they been grilled on this previously, in which they denied any such scrutiny was taking place?
Yeah, the acting director was asked about this about a year ago, as I recall, specifically asked that, can you assure us that you're not targeting conservative political groups because of their ideology? He said, I can absolutely assure you of that. Now, this was going on at a time when basically the whole thing was being run out of the D.C. office, and they were the ones that were setting up these teams, and so he absolutely lied. He ought to resign immediately, or ought to be fired. And something else that Obama needs to do, and I doubt will do it, or is at least going to resist it, appoint a special counsel to look into this. Supposedly the president is outraged. Supposedly he wants heads to roll. Fine, don't leave this investigation in the hand of the Justice Department, in the hands of Eric Holder, because if, in fact, this goes all the way to the White House, and I think ultimately we're going to find out it does, Eric Holder will be investigating his boss. That's not going to happen. They will cover it up just like they covered up Fast and Furious. Mm-hmm. They will not let Obama take the heat on this. They're going to try to hide it. We need a special, independent prosecutor to look into this, and we'll see what happens with Obama, whether or not he does it.
Some have compared President Obama to President Nixon on this matter. The White House, even today, just yesterday at their press conference, scoffing at such a notion. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's a very apt analogy because of the fact that President Nixon did, in fact, use the IRS to go after his political enemies. And that's exactly what Obama's been doing here. That's exactly what the IRS was doing. And by the way, this is one of the things that's going to come out more and more, and there's already some people talking about it, is it was not just the Tea Party groups. It was not just the people applying for 501c4. It was businessmen and companies out there who had the audacity to give money to the Republican Party for campaigns, Senate campaigns, House campaigns, even to Mitt Romney. They were targeted by the IRS. They were audited by the IRS. These audits were triggered for no other reason than the fact that they were outspoken conservatives or outspoken Republicans that were supporting someone against Obama. And that, I think we're going to find much more of that is going to come forward.
So if we can drain their resources by audits and endless paperwork, they won't have monies to put into anybody's political coffers.
Exactly. Mr. Van Camp was the one of them that came forward recently in the news, and he said it cost him $80,000 to fight the IRS on this. It cost his company $80,000. And, of course, countless hours of paperwork they had to do, and the IRS found nothing. That his companies or he had done nothing wrong, but it was specifically retaliation for the fact that he opposed the Obama administration.
Well, just as this event is unfolding here over the last few days, we learned then that Mr. Obama's Department of Justice was secretly monitoring the phone lines of the Associated Press. If you would, Michael, unfold the events of this issue for our listeners.
Well, basically what they were doing is they weren't listening into calls. They weren't tapping into it. But what they were doing is they were getting the phone records of up to 100 employees of the Associated Press to find out who they were talking to. Now, supposedly this was a national security issue because somebody had leaked information to the Associated Press about the bomber in Yemen, or the attempted bomber in Yemen, a new underwear-type bomber, and they wanted to find out where the leak was coming from. Well, there's ways to do that. This was not the way. This was a broad brush that they took to basically listen in on, or not listen in, but find out who the AP reporters were talked to. And again, this was designed as a direct attack on the First Amendment because, let's face it, whistleblowers are the lifeblood of us keeping our government in check. Mm-hmm. The whistleblowers that came forward in Benghazi, they talked to not to the media, but they talked to Congress, and this was very important. Now, leaking security information that will affect our national security can be dangerous to us, obviously. But if this was the case, then they needed to find out who was doing it and not just get the phone records of everybody. This was designed, as I said, not to really find out who had leaked this information, but to intimidate potential whistleblowers, to intimidate members of the news media. And, you know, Obama has finally succeeded in doing something I never thought I'd see happen, and that is you got the liberal media turning on him because they're finding out that not only was the AP being monitored, we don't know who else was being monitored out there. They're finding out that they're being lied to about Benghazi. They've been lied to about a number of different issues. And now here we have the Department of Justice that is under fire for this. And Eric Holder says they followed all the proper procedures. They did not follow the legal procedures. This was done without notifying the AP as to what they were looking for. The AP had actually offered, at the time that they broke this story, they offered, went to the White House and Department of Justice and said, we will hold this story for a week so that you can assure us that we are not going to cause any damage to national security. They were told it would not damage national security, and so they released the story. Now, if they were told that by the White House or the Justice Department or both, and they went ahead and released the story, then there was absolutely no justification for the Department of Justice to be going after the phone records. The justification that this was involving a leak was just not true. The leak was approved, or the information was approved by the Justice Department for the AP to release, and then they start trying to find out who the members of the AP are talking to. I think they were trying to find out who they were talking to in the White House or in the government that might be providing information that would be detrimental to the Obama administration.
Well, it seems, the liberal media has been giving the Obama administration a pass on just about everything, and perhaps this is going to serve as a wake-up call to the media in this regard. But what's interesting in all of this, there was a story that came from CNSnews.com yesterday that stated President Barack Obama issued a statement heralding World Press Freedom Day, May 2012, at the very same time his Department of Justice was secretly obtaining phone records records from Associated Press reporters and editors. How ironic.
Yeah, ironic and hypocritical, to say the least.
Yeah. Eric Holder, and you alluded to this, he's played no role in this AP phone subpoena, but he's defended the Justice Department's examination of the AP phone records. Part of this investigation, a grave national security leak, he's calling it. You're saying there was no grave national security leak.
No, absolutely not. In fact, that was a question that he was directly asked about in the congressional hearing today, and I was able to watch part of that. And most of the time, he was just sandbagging Congress, as he usually does, as all the administration officials do. And but he was asked about, why did this happen if, in fact, y'all had approved the release of this information by the AP? And he said he didn't know anything about that. In fact, he said he didn't know anything about anything. He didn't know anything about the IRS scandal. He didn't know anything about the monitoring of the phone records, that this was done by somebody who worked for him, but he knew nothing about it. It reminds me of, I remember, and you're probably too young for this, but there was a show called Hogan's Heroes.
I'm not too young.
on television, where you had it was about a prison camp where Americans were being held, among others, and you had a sergeant, a German sergeant.
Sergeant Schultz.
He was asked anything, Sergeant Schultz, he would say it, I saw nothing, I know nothing.
I know nothing.
Right, I know nothing. That's the kind of comments that you were hearing today from Eric Holder. That's the kind of comments you're hearing from Jay Carney in press briefings he gives. The president says he knew nothing about the IRS scandal until he heard about it in the news. He says he knew nothing about what the Department of Justice was doing until he heard it in the news. That is an absolute lie, and even if it was true, it shows how incompetent the man is, because that's the guy in charge. And one member of Congress said it very well today. Go and look at the sign that Harry Truman used to have on his desk when he was president.
Yeah.
The buck stops here.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael, do you believe that these recent stories are out there, are taking the spotlight off from Benghazi? It seems like, we're just kind of digging into the Benghazi issue, which is another scandal in and of itself. What's the correlation between all these stories coming forth at this time?
Well, as I see it, it's not going to take away from the Benghazi scandal. I think that they were hoping that something would happen that would take people away from it, but it's not happening. The Benghazi thing is too big. The president calls it a sideshow. Jay Carney says it's strictly political. But you have Democrats and Republicans coming out and saying, we are not getting the truth here. The American people were lied to by the administration after this occurred. I hear people saying that Benghazi is not going to go away. I think that is the truth. I think that, they're hoping it will go away. Unfortunately, Fast and Furious basically went away because other things emerged that attacked, the interest of the public, and the White House was able to kind of skate on that. I think we need a special prosecutor out there to look into all of these scandals, everything. Fast and Furious, we still don't have the answers there. And, it's got to be done.
Well, folks, we're going to open the phone lines here, 800-733-9829. Give us your thoughts. Give us your questions, 800-733-9829. Right after the break, folks, we're hearing more and more of the I word coming through Washington hallways. We'll have our guest comment on that as well. You're listening to Crosstalk.
Marital conflict is increasing in our society. The commitment made to love and to cherish, sadly, is being discarded in many relationships. In 2012, a feature-length film was produced, which presents true commitment in marriage. Amazing Love is the story about a youth director and his wife, who take 5 teens from their youth group to the wilderness for 2 nights to camp out. 2 teen girls have a sharp argument that causes division. Tensions are high. The youth leader gathers all the kids and decides to tell the story of Hosea. Using flashback, the film takes you to Nazareth as the story of Hosea unfolds. It's a story of commitment, of keeping vows before God, of faithfulness and unconditional love. The DVD, Amazing Love, is available for a donation of $18 to VCY America. The story will impact teens and adults alike. To obtain this feature-length film, call 1-800-729-9829. 1-800-729-9829.
This is Crosstalk on the VCY America Network. Michael Connolly is our guest today, a constitutional attorney. He is Executive Director of the United States Justice Foundation. And again, folks, they are a nonprofit, public interest legal organization that's dedicated to instruct, inform, and educate the public and to litigate the significant legal issues confronting America. Their website is usjf.net. That's usjf.net. Michael, we are hearing that I word perhaps a little bit more frequently, that of impeachment. Are these impeachable offenses?
Absolutely. And I have a blog on the Constitution, on constitutional law. I've been writing for about 3 years, a little over 3 years now. And I have twice written articles about the impeachable offenses I think Obama's committed already. And that's prior to all of this. I mean, he violates his oath of office. He takes the same oath that I took as an Army officer to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Instead, he violates the Constitution constantly by executive orders that are unconstitutional. He bypasses Congress. He orders his agencies to do things that are unconstitutional. I'm, in fact, probably going to be writing another article for my blog in the next day or two saying now is the time to impeach. Now is the time for Congress and the House of Representatives to pass articles of impeachment because it would do several things. Number one, it will allow the attorneys, once impeachment is passed by a majority of the House, it goes to the Senate for a trial. You have an actual trial presided over by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. There are lawyers for the House of Representatives. There will be lawyers for the plaintiffs, basically, and then you would have lawyers for Obama to defend him. These lawyers for the House of Representatives would have full subpoena power. They could depose witnesses. They could find out a lot of information that then would be presented to the public in the open hearings in the Senate. The public would find out a lot more than they know right now. And even the mainstream news media that favors Obama would have a difficult time ignoring this. So I think impeachment is something that needs to be done at this stage.
Let's go and to our callers here. Our number 800-733-9829 to get your thoughts. Robert in Oregon, go ahead. You're on the air.
Yes, but the closer it gets to what's going on, Obama realizes if he's losing power, he's going to do something stupid, create a crisis, like they say, and then he's going to declare martial law and declare himself a dictator. That's what I'm really concerned about because, in my opinion, this is my opinion, that everything that's happening right now is coming from his office, from his desk.
What about this aspect of martial law, Michael?
Well, that's something I've been concerned about for a long time, and that could occur through a false flag event that's staged to give him the right to declare martial law. Martial law is very limited as to what can actually be done under it, and he signed an executive order a couple of years ago giving himself broad powers. If he declares martial law, then he can do it for any reason whatsoever. Then he takes control of all transportation in this country, takes control of all food distribution, all electric power distribution. He basically would control the country and set himself up as a dictator. I think he already considers himself a dictator. The way he bypasses Congress, the way he has his agencies bypass the Congress and the Constitution, and I think the unconstitutional assaults he's making on the Second Amendment and on the First Amendment to the Constitution are clearly indicative. And yes, I'm afraid that something may happen that he thinks will justify him declaring martial law. At that point, we're going to have a civil war in this country.
Robert, thank you for your call. To Steve in Florida. You're on the air, Steve.
Thank you, Jim. I'm glad your guest just brought up about the false flag event, which may happen. My wife was cooking as she's listening to you earlier with all these events, and in a loud voice, she says, "Where are the men? Where are the pastors?" And I concur. The pastors in this nation seem to be hirelings and not shepherds. They appear to be cowards. Where are they? Why are they not getting millions of folks rallying to demand that the Senate and the Congress remove this creature, this reprobate creature, from the White House?
Your thoughts here, Michael?
Well, I think there are a lot of people out there that are already intimidated, and a lot of people, unfortunately, have given up. And then there are a lot of people who, particularly pastors, and I confess that my church left me. I didn't leave my church. I was United Methodist. And when my local church began being less interested in families that made up the church and more interested in in illegal immigrants and more interested in the rights of homosexuals, to the point where they wouldn't allow the Boy Scout troop to have Scout Sunday this year in their church. That's when I said enough is enough. So we have pastors out there who, unfortunately, are in line with the Obama administration. The ones that are not, many of them have either given up at this point after the election, or they're frightened, because that's something else that the IRS has been looking into, and this is something that will be breaking, I think, in the future, and that is they're looking into intimidating church groups, particularly the evangelical churches, talking to them about their tax status, telling them that they have to abide by Obamacare edicts, telling them that they cannot say anything at all about what's happening in this country, because if they do, they will lose their tax-exempt status. Threats were actually made to churches prior to the election, and a number of pastors here in Texas on one Sunday actually came out and in their sermons and endorsed Mitt Romney and said, we are going to step forward and dare the IRS to come after us. They haven't done it yet, but I think there's a possibility they will.
Our number to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829. Let's go to Lucy calling from Laurel, Delaware. You're on the air, Lucy.
Yes. I just have one comment. If the president doesn't know what's going on and Eric Holder doesn't know what's going on, why don't we get up a petition and demand that they resign?
Interesting thought. I mean, here we're talking about people in the number one seats, and they don't know what's going on. And, Michael, there's many who are skeptical in believing such a notion.
Well, it's just not true. They absolutely know what's going on. I mean, but that's basically the line that the administration officials toe. I mean, if you look back at the testimony before Congress of Janet Napolitano, she didn't know anything about anything. I mean, what is the woman doing supposedly protecting our homeland security? But when she gets before Congress, she just says, I don't know. I can't answer that. Mm-hmm. Repeatedly she says that, just like Eric Holder was saying a while ago in front of Congress.
Sometimes, Michael, the people listening even to this program sit back and say, what can I do? How can I be involved in this? Is there any course of action that common, ordinary citizens can take at this time?
Well, there are a number of things that they can do. Number one is to continue to press Congress, your members of Congress, even if they're on the left, you can still make your voice heard and on issues that are very important. Everything from immigration to our national security needs to be done. We have a last line of defense in this country, which is our state legislatures, because we have the 10th Amendment. You never hear the liberals want to talk about the 10th Amendment, but the 10th Amendment to the Constitution basically says that any power not specifically granted to the federal government is reserved for the states and the people. The state legislatures, and some of them are taking these actions, for example, nullifying certain actions by the federal government. Basically, in Kansas and Oklahoma, for example, they said, we are not going to enforce any new infringements on the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms, by the federal government. This is important. I've written a booklet called Our Constitution, where I take each article in each section of the Constitution, and I print them the way they're originally written, and then I put in my comments. One of the things in there is about the Bill of Rights, and it includes a preamble to the Bill of Rights, which basically says that the rights enumerated in the Bill of Rights are not rights given to us by the government. They're put in there because these are restrictions on the government. Those rights came to us through our Creator. Those rights are inherent. The government cannot restrict those rights. In other words, Congress can say all it wants to about gun control, but Congress has no power to even vote on changing the Second Amendment except by an amendment process. So people need to contact their legislatures, and then people need to support the groups out there that are fighting. Right now, like I said, the Justice Foundation, we represent people for free. We're going to be representing hundreds of veterans around the country for free because they're losing their Second Amendment rights through illegal actions by the VA, and we need your support. So if you're interested in donating to our group or finding more about it, go to usjf.net.
Our next call from Olney, Illinois. Dorothy, you're on the air.
What that man who was just talking was saying is what a lot of people have tried to do, and everybody that tries to stand up for our country and everything about our country, doing the right thing, we're put on a list by the Obama White House as terrorists. We're all marked as terrorists. There's been some people that have said that my life's at stake, and they've been shot for calling in and telling stuff on Crosstalk that is the truth against this president, and he's never showed a birth certificate, and that's enough to take him out. He's done a lot of treasonous things, in which, like he said, making himself a dictator, making martial law. Well, since he's never shown that he's a real citizen, which everybody knows he's not, we should take him out of office for lack of being able to prove that he's eligible, because he's not.
Does that enter into the picture at all, Michael?
Well, there have always been questions about his citizenship. He's refused. He's sandbagged, just like he does with everything else, and providing an actual birth certificate. We don't know where he was born. My feeling, and that's something the U.S. Justice Foundation has been involved in, we were involved with trying to force the White House to prove that he is, in fact, eligible to be president of the United States. But my view of Obama at this point is that it doesn't matter where he was born. He's not an American. He's not an American because he does not believe in our Constitution. He does not believe in a limited form of federal government. He believes he is above the Constitution, that he's above the law, and he is not fulfilling the oath of office he took to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Let's go to our next caller from Milwaukee. Susan, go ahead. You're on the air.
Hello? Is that me?
Yes, go ahead, Susan.
Oh, okay. I want to first of all just simply say that I'm not scared. I've been carrying a sign whenever I'm waiting for the bus, and I'm going to go out protesting so they can do whatever the heck they want to with me, even though I've got a sciatic nerve problem. But anyways, first of all, I heard that the regulation was written a year or two back when something about tapes came up, and it said that Holder had to have been the person who gave the order to tap. That's one thing. The another thing is Landmark Organization is filed a lawsuit about the tapes and Tea Parties with because he's involved in the Tea Party Patriots. Anyways, a year or two back, in 2010 they filed a lawsuit. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, and Michael, you've said that this has been going on for a couple of years now, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. There's some groups out there that have their applications have been there for 3 years.
Wow.
And they have not been acted upon.
And
but they get these harassing letters asking questions that the IRS is not allowed to ask.
And on the other issue of the AP phone lines, would that order have to come from the Attorney General?
Absolutely. The Attorney General is responsible for what the actions of what goes on. It's just like Fast and Furious. Eric Holder claims he knew nothing about Fast and Furious. That's been proven to be a lie. So, yes, anything like that, the Attorney General has to know about it. Again, if he in fact didn't, then he's violating his oath of office because he's incompetent.
You're listening to Crosstalk here on VCY America. We'll pick up more calls after the break here at 800-733-9829. Michael Connolly is our guest today as we talk about scandal shaking the White House. We'll be right back.
For the Worldview Weekend Minute, I'm Brandon House. Our website is worldviewweekend.com. We're continuing our series on a biblical worldview and money, 20 points. We're on point number 11 today, which is you cannot serve God and serve money. Matthew chapter 6, verse 24 speaks to this. You will either love one and hate the other, but you can't love both, God and money. Again, money's not evil. It's the love of money that's the problem. So you can't serve God and serve money. What happens? You compromise. You end up compromising for the money. And we see many people doing that today, don't we? We see a lot of people that are in Christian ministry that compromise biblical truth to appeal to more people for the love of money. Let's not do that. Number 12, don't be anxious about material things. Matthew chapter 6, verses 25 to 31 speaks to this. Don't be anxious, but in everything make your request known to God. God is more than able to supply all of our needs. We don't need to be anxious about money.
You can check out the website to our guest today by going to usjf.net. usjf.net. That is to Michael Connolly's organization, the United States Justice Foundation. Let's go back to the phone lines here. Holding the longest is Rick calling from Navarre, Florida. Hi, Rick, you're on the air.
Yes, the one thing that bothers me about this whole situation is that the House leadership doesn't seem to have moved expeditiously on these complaints. Once the issue of IRS corruption and pressure on political groups based on their affiliation was surfaced to them through the representatives in the respective districts, the House leadership should have moved aggressively to have hearings on this and surface this issue, because it takes years to resolve these things. Okay, so my question to the guest is, why do you think the House leadership did not move expeditiously, and has Boehner been as incompetent in handling this as he's been incompetent in handling Fast and Furious and the other investigations?
The Benghazi as well.
Benghazi as well.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate the question. Your thoughts here on this, Michael?
Well, I'm very critical of Boehner and the fact that he seems to be a Washington insider who doesn't want to rock the boat, and he's one of those Republicans who is more interested in what the media has to say about him than taking the action that needs to be taken. He should have appointed by now a special panel to investigate Benghazi. There's a lot of pressure on him to do that. He still has not done it. I agree with the caller that he should have immediately, when people in Congress were being told by their local Tea Parties and their districts that this was going on several years ago, they should have convened an investigation then. And Boehner basically sat back and did not really support ISA in the Fast and Furious investigation. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what Boehner's doing out there, but I think it's time that the Republican Party in the House of Representatives start looking for a new leader.
To the state of Michigan, Gene, go ahead. You're on the air.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call. Why don't the Christian community go up there and rally? Like the gay rights and that, they go and rally when they want their benefits and have banners. Impeach the president, and march around Washington and go around the House where they get things started and really get on them. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people rallying. I'm sure that God would bless and probably something would happen. What is your take on that?
Well, I think that what's happening right now is going to re-energize the Tea Parties. You remember they had the demonstrations for a long time going on against Obamacare and against the president. And these were huge demonstrations all over the country. And they even had a march on Washington. They've become sort of disheartened, I think, by the election results. Excuse me. And but I think what's happening now, the scandals that are breaking loose, I think it's going to re-energize these people. And I think more and more Tea Party groups are going to spring up. They're going to get stronger. And I think more and more people are going to be prepared just to do that march on Washington.
Gene, thank you for your question. Let's go next to the state of Oregon. Sandra, you're on the air.
Yes, I heard the speaker say a little bit ago that they didn't know where Obama was born. And I heard him and watched him out of his own lips on TV several years back. It looked like a college age group forum, or maybe late high school. Anyway, I heard him say, I was born in Kenya. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
Just
thank
surprised me that he didn't know where he was born.
Thank you. Well, that's because of so many different conflicting birth certificates right now, and I know one of these cases is making its way up to Alabama Supreme Court Justice Roy Moore right now as well. To Fitchburg, Wisconsin. Shelley, you're on the air.
Hi, I just have a comment and a question. First, he was accurate for once, I thought in my life, when he said it's a sideshow, because the whole government seems to be a circus right now. But the question I have is, I had read maybe on WNB or some, I don't know, but he had said, Obama himself said, I don't know if I make it to the end of this term, after he was elected the second time here. And I'm just wondering if we're not missing the forest for the trees, and that maybe this has all kind of been a setup for something on a bigger scale, like a world government that gets somebody else in that's going to hopefully if he gets impeached, change everything and the whole country will be, I just wonder if it isn't a part of a bigger plan. If anybody's thought of that.
Okay. Michael, your thoughts?
Well, I think there is a bigger plan here, and I think one of the plans for Obama is that he's not interested in just being president of the United States or dictator of the United States. He's interested in controlling the world. There had been reports coming out, right into his first term, beginning of his first term, that his ultimate goal was to be the Secretary General of the United Nations, and that he was going to use this as a stepping stone to get there. But I think before that happens, he wants, and the people that control him, because he's not doing all this on his own, he's not smart enough to do it. But the people that control him want to make sure that this country, as a democratic republic, is destroyed. They want to destroy our form of government. They want to destroy our traditions. They want to destroy our families. They want to make us a socialist or communist dictatorship, and then move further to basically Obama can do what he wants to do, ultimately rule the world. It sounds draconian, but I think it's very, very true.
Thanks for your thoughts here today, Shelley.
Thank you.
Finally, let me ask you this, Michael. Why does all this matter? Why does all of this really make a difference, these issues that are coming forth here at this time?
It makes a difference because our country makes a difference. We have started experimenting in Republican form of government over 200 years ago, and our founding fathers put things in the Bill of Rights like protection of the Second Amendment because they did not want this government to turn into a tyranny. They wanted the American people to be able to defend themselves. We need to maintain our form of government. We need to take back our family values. We need to take back our schools. I'm a veteran. I was a commander of American Legion Post for 2 years. I have a son who's in Afghanistan. He's on combat tour number 7. I've got another son who's a Black Hawk pilot. My father fought in World War II. We have all those people out there who have fought and died for this country, and we cannot, in their memory, to honor them, we cannot give up the fight. We have to take back our country at this point, and we have to protect our democracy and protect our Constitution.
Michael Connolly, our guest today, Executive Director of the United States Justice Foundation, their website, usjf.net, usjf.net. Michael, thanks for being with us here today.
Thank you, Jim.
And folks, again, another reason why we need to adhere to what it says in the book of Timothy to pray for this country. Be praying for our leaders, those who are in authority, that we might lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and honesty. Thanks for joining us today on Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Take Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.